This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Gavin Beer, the consultant metallurgist for Altona Rare Earths, is joining us today on Stockbox. Gavin, it's the first time we're speaking. Thank you very much for your time. How are you?
Mark, I'm keeping very well, thanks, and thanks for having me on board.
No, it's very good to be speaking to you. It's the first time we're speaking, as I say, but also the first time we're talking to a metallurgist. And I believe metallurgists tend to be found in rare earth environments. So I wonder if you can start us off by just perhaps giving us the lowdown on what is a metallurgist and the role in the company.
Oh, not a problem. Look, metallurgist is a funny term because it's associated with metals, but in essence, their role is to sit between the geologist, followed by the mining engineer who digs the ore. We need to make a product, in essence, that is then suitable for the marketing team to sell. So, in other commodities, if you're thinking of iron ore, the metallurgist makes the iron. If you're thinking of copper deposits, they'll make either a copper concentrate or a final copper metal. In rare earths, their role is to make a product that is saleable, that can be perhaps a concentrate, but more often it is a mixed chemical of all of the rare earths, or ultimately separated rare earths as their tradable form as oxides.
Okay, so you're responsible for the processing of the raw materials into an end product to sell, is that right?
So that's a pretty good summary, Mark.
Okay.
It involves a combination of physical and, of course, chemical processes to make saleable commodities.
Okay. So would you say you're a rare earths expert?
Mark, it's one of those things that I've fallen into. Almost 17 years ago, I started working for my first rare earth company, which was an Australian company, Arafura Resources. And after leaving them, I started my own consultancy. So I've since consulted to something like 25 rare earth companies,
okay.
Of which I'd probably consider 4 or 5 majors.
Okay. Well, I wonder if I can ask you to give us the 101 on rare earths.
Of course. Rare earths are an interesting group of elements. They sit right down the bottom of the periodic table. And for those that know the periodic table, they will sit as a separate row. At the very bottom, you've got a row of what they call the lanthanides, and then below that, the actinides, both of which ironically occur together. So the rare earths and the actinides, which are the radioactives, occur together. In essence, they have been used for a number of purposes over the most recent years, 3 or 4 decades, in essence, is where they've become highly used. The focus is now mainly on 2 or 3 rare earths, which are neodymium, Nd, praseodymium, Pr, and dysprosium, Dy. So I'll use their abbreviations in their form, Nd, Pr, Dy.
Mm-hmm.
These are the elements that are responsible for making the permanent magnets. And the reason that permanent magnets are finding desire, or they are sought after, is both in wind generators, where you're essentially converting mechanical energy into electrical energy for storage. So mechanical to electrical, that's wind turbines. Or in reverse, you're converting electrical energy into mechanical, and that's essentially the drivetrain motors that are in electric vehicles, EVs. So both of these technologies, which are part of the green revolution, are relying on these 3 elements, Nd, Pr, and Dy.
Okay. Now, you alluded just before we started talking that rare earth deposits can be challenging. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So look, rare earths are a bit of a misnomer in that it comes back to the history, which I won't go into now, why they were called rare earths. Their occurrence isn't particularly rare. However, what is rare is to find them in concentrations that are high enough to economically produce and extract. So that is the challenge, to find these locations around the world of ore bodies where the rare earths are in concentrations that are both high enough, but also are in the form that they can be recovered economically to make our final products that, as I said, we require essentially now for our permanent magnets.
Okay. So was there anything particular that attracted you to Altona Rare Earths and their projects and deposit types that they have?
That's an interesting question. In essence, rare earths can be broadly divided into two types of deposits. You have what are called the lights, which contain the elements lanthanum, cerium, neodymium, praseodymium. So they contain two of the three elements that are required for heavy for the permanent magnets. The Dy, the dysprosium, are what are contained in what they call the heavies, or the heavy rare earth deposits. Now, Altona is interesting in that it actually has its foot on the deposits of both heavies and light rare earth deposits around the world.
Okay. And do you know how advanced the projects are, or not?
The projects at the moment are in the going through the acquisition phase and also the evaluation phase.
Mm-hmm.
So the first, of course, is to get access to this, and that's comes through with the framework of the national legislation and mining within the various countries, all of which are in Africa at the moment for Altona. Then, of course, the evaluation. So just having the rare earths present in the ground doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be viable in terms of physically or economically being able to extract.
Okay. And how much are you involved at this stage then, Gavin? Or does your role ramp up later on?
My role at the moment is essentially a red light, green light. So there are a number of milestones that you need to essentially go through or hit for a deposit to go to the next phase. So the deposits that Altona are evaluating at the moment are going through these. And I might say they're actually looking quite positive at this stage.
Okay.
So, as I said, one of the milestones, of course, is grade. The second milestone is to actually be in a form within the minerals that can be recovered, upgraded ideally initially with a physical process, and then, of course, later on recovered and refined with a chemical process.
Okay. So when you talk about the red light, green light, then what are the key metrics you're looking for that Altona's projects have that make you comfortable that they could be a viable deposit in the future?
Certainly. So when you, and probably the best way to explain this is to stand back a little bit of what we try to achieve. So in general, you have two types of rare earth deposits. You have what they call the hard rock, or generally the carbonatite type deposits. You can also get rare earth from the mineral sands deposits, but we won't go there at the moment. The carbonatite deposits, you need to be able to make a mineral concentrate similar to what you would do, for example, with copper or nickel or other base metals. Altona also have an ionic clay deposit, which you don't need to make a mineral concentrate, but it does need to be acceptable or suitable for extraction of these, in that case, the heavy rare earths, by using a very weak chemical contact process. So to go back to the red light, green light, the hard rock or carbonatite, we need to be able to make a concentrate. The ionic rare earths, ionic clays, we need to be able to demonstrate that we can release the rare earths from the clays with these weak chemical solutions.
Okay. And this would be a process that is then tested at a later date, would it be?
Well, we're actually doing that at the moment.
Okay.
So we've got samples from surface, samples from drill core, samples from trenches, and they're undergoing test work at specialist laboratories as we speak.
Okay. Well, I wonder just a final thought from you when you said at the start that you are responsible for effectively marketing and getting a product to sell. What's your feeling? What's your take on the market outlook and the demand for rare earths in the green economy in the future?
Oh, look, I'm actually very buoyant on this, Mark. The future, particularly of electric vehicles, is absolutely dependent on rare earths. People talk about lithium with regard to the lithium-ion batteries, and don't get me wrong, they are absolutely required as well for storage. But ultimately, the rare earths are needed in the drivetrains for electric vehicles. As I say, in the permanent magnets, they are also needed in the drivetrain of the wind turbines, and also perhaps hydroelectric turbines as well, to both generate and store power, generate power for storage. So I can only see the requirement for the rare earths increasing.
And do you see at the moment, or is it too early to say that demand might outstrip supply?
We're getting to a point where everybody, when they talk rare earths, considers China as the dominant force. Now, most of Chinese rare earth supply actually has come from a particular region, which is Inner Mongolia in the north, where a lot of the rare earths came from iron tailings. Now, these iron tailings, or iron ore processing tailings, are essentially almost deplete. China is looking outside of its borders now to keep its refineries and, most importantly, its downstream processing industries going. So these permanent magnets, and even downstream from there, manufacturing things like electric motors and hard drives, etc., that require these magnets. So the supply is now starting to decline in China, but the growth of the consumer market's increasing.
Do you think at some point there will be an inflection point?
Look, I believe it's happening now.
Okay.
And I'm seeing that because we are now getting inquiries from end users, particularly from EV manufacturers, are now looking back at source saying, how can we ensure that we will have supply, rather than assume that there would always be a third-party trader or a commodity trader that would supply this. They're now realizing that they need to ensure continuity of supply. And these inquiries are coming through even to juniors. So to answer your question in a nutshell, absolutely, I can see that we're at an inflection point.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that a lot, that manufacturers are looking to partner directly with miners. Really, I'm talking more, I guess, in terms of pricing. I mean, do we see the prices reflected yet, or at some point do you think that will really get recognised and be a big inflection point for the pricing of rare earths?
It's a really, I'm not a marketing specialist, but rare earths are a little bit unique in that they're not traded, for example, on the LME. They're actually a specialty chemical. So really it's going to come down to having a fair bit of flexibility, particularly for those that can supply or give continuity of supply.
Okay.
The price that you set really isn't going to be reflected on past. It's going to be reflected on your ability to supply the right product at the right time. So it's not something like, for example, copper or iron or even these battery metals like lithium hydroxides or cobalt or nickel sulfates, which are going on to the LME. The rare earths really are specialty chemicals, and the contracts that are being negotiated and held are really quite secretive.
Okay, that's very interesting, and I think we will get you on our Market Musings podcast in the future and delve into that a bit more deeply. It sounds like a very interesting subject, but for now, Gavin Beer, the consultant metallurgist for Altona Rare Earths, thank you very much for your time.
Appreciate it, Mark, and thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Stockbox interview. For more information, interviews and videos, visit our website at stockboxmedia.com or give us a follow on Twitter by searching @StockboxMedia.